And even if they're in the same market, maybe we'll be bidding on the same property at the same time. It's not a level of competition that's always, always, always. And you get to be friendly with a lot of other real estate guys.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying the show and get some great value for your investing needs, let us hear about it. Leave us that rating and review. It helps us and helps other listeners find this show to get the same value you're getting. And listen, if you haven't done so, or if this is your first time listening, be sure to hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Steven Weinstock. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to classproperty.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button today. Now, with nearly 2 decades of experience in the real estate investment arena, Steven Weinstock stands as a seasoned professional renowned for his strategic prowess and commitment to client success. As the principal of WE Capital LLC, Steven leads the charge in acquiring and managing a diverse portfolio of properties with a particular emphasis on multifamily assets. Let's welcome to the show, Steven Weinstock.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you so much for having me.
Steven,
Looking
great to
forward.
have you on, man. Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure. Started 2001. Started buying smaller assets, single family homes. How I got into that is a separate story. Did that for a while. Made real estate my full-time career, so to speak. Over the years, larger 5+, 7s, 12s, some mixed use, retail, office. About 8 years ago, started raising some capital to buy larger properties, and now we're focused on Louisville, Kentucky, Cleveland, and New Jersey. Multifamily assets is typically what I'm looking for. Raising capital from outside investors to purchase these properties, and hopefully making money together to enjoy it.
I love it, man. We talked about over 20 years experience there doing this, starting in single family, slowly building up that portfolio to small commercial multifamily, and now you're doing larger commercial multifamily. A couple things, man. Just one, talk to me about the patience. I know a lot of people are so eager to scale quickly, and certainly, one of the reasons you listen to a show like this is to learn those insights on how to scale. But over a 20+ year investing career, you slowly started to build that portfolio, slowly started to scale larger and larger, and then ultimately bring it on investors. What was your thought process? And talk to me about kind of your comfort level scaling.
So thank you for the compliment by saying I'm a patient investor. At the time it's happening, I don't know if I'd call myself that patient, but I guess with 20 years behind me, it makes me look a little better. I always wanted to scale big. It took me just a while. Mostly it was what they say are my own limited beliefs of what I could do, how I could do it, how I could approach it. There wasn't a lot of education back then as far as easily accessible online content to even get ideas, so you could start tinkering and changing your thought process. I was patient. I'm not sure if it was on purpose. It took me a while to get into larger properties. In hindsight, do I wish I started with commercial multifamily? The answer is yes. Do I think I needed the many years of smaller assets to get into it? Yes, perhaps so. It's hard to change the past, but at the time, I didn't think I was patient. But yeah, over time, real estate typically works out.
Well, there are a lot of investors who are maybe where you were early on, right? Have a small portfolio, they want to scale, they want to go bigger, but like you, maybe it's limiting beliefs, maybe it's lack of opportunity or some other struggles. When you think about the limited beliefs, or at least the perception of, where you were and how to scale, what would you go back and change or give advice to someone who's maybe in that position today?
When I was buying smaller assets, it's more of just me, an owner operator, me doing everything, basically finding the deals and coming up with the equity somehow to buy the deals, and really just dealing with everything. When you transition to larger, it's more of a partnership process, and it is a different business. I mean, it's real estate, but it's really a different business. So it took me a while to get out of that owner operator. It's all about me. I have the secret sauce before I could figure out on how to not just have partners, but how to structure the partnership. It's not, my partner doesn't have to be an expert in every aspect of the real estate. They don't have to know how to renovate units or to shop for the best insurance and deal with the bank. Every partner could have a different skill they bring. It took me a while to figure that out. As I was doing smaller properties.
You mentioned that scaling up and doing larger deals, raising capital, that's a different business, right? It's different than being the owner operator where you're running the show. You're doing everything, finding the deal, analyzing it, coming up with the money. When you're in this syndication space or this other world where you're raising capital, it's more of a partnership. You've got to, think of it as a different business. Describe and contrast kind of the two from your viewpoint, versus making that transition from an owner operator to really being in kind of the real estate syndication business.
When you're buying a larger property, there's more hands that need to be on the deal. You could have an expert when it comes to dealing with the debt, as far as which lender, Freddie Mac or just the banks. You could have a partner who's what they call a key principal because he has tremendous liquidity. You could have partners that focus on the management aspect of the property management aspect of the deal. When you're doing the smaller properties, you're really doing everything. You're buying a 3-unit house, you're finding it. You're dealing with the brokers. You do network. You do meet others. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not just by yourself. You have a network of brokers, and you might have at one point a network of a few investors or hard money guys to fund you the deal. But the transition, there's more hands needed on a larger multifamily deal. And since it's larger dollars and larger amounts, it could have a dedicated person, handling that. An equity raiser, that could be all they do for the deal, and they could have a nice piece of the deal because they do that, because their value is tremendous. They're bringing in they're dealing with the larger dollars, so there's more money to go around.
Yeah, so listen, if you're looking to scale, right? Maybe you're that owner operator today, managing your own portfolio. What I'm hearing you say is you really have to get comfortable working with other people, right? Networking, expanding your team. You hear people say this over and over, but commercial real estate is a team business. And if you are used to and very comfortable doing everything by yourself, that's one of the areas you're going to have to stretch. You're going to have to get comfortable working with other people, bringing in folks who can maybe bring some skills to the table that you don't have today, or quite frankly, you don't have the time to do it all today. So that's one of the things that I think is a challenge for people looking to make that transition, is just getting comfortable relinquishing control, relinquishing power, and also admitting that, hey, you might need people, right? You need someone who has a higher net worth and liquidity than you. You need someone who has a deeper network and can raise that capital, bring capital to the table. You might need other people, and just to be humble enough to recognize that, seek out that support and that help. I think it's a challenge for many people. I know you said it took you a while and you had some limiting beliefs. Did you have any specific limiting beliefs that were hard to overcome to make that transition?
Some of the things I couldn't get past was, when I was thinking of different partners, I thought, or at least at the time, I thought that the partners are, like you're marrying them, and it's everything and every deal, and no matter what. And I was finally able to figure out that every deal itself could have its own set of partners. And obviously, if things work out, different aspects, we try to, use the same partners again. And if just something doesn't work out, or you're just not comfortable working with somebody, there's no harm and on the next deal not partnering up with them. It's not a marriage. It's a big boy game. I like to say that a lot. Um, People transition. It's not even sometimes one company buying the asset. It could be, three different company LLCs and three different principals who are joining forces, JV or co-GP into a deal. So there's lots of partnerships. It could be one-off. It could be even more. It took me a while to figure that out. I didn't need somebody who's exactly like me. I needed people who were stuff that I couldn't do, or I couldn't do as well, or something I couldn't focus on.
Yeah, it sounds like, if I'm playing back what you said, it sounds like one of the challenges you had was maybe placing too much of an emphasis on that partner being a marriage, right? And finding that perfect partner who you were going to be, in bed with for the next 10, 15 years doing deals together. And instead saying, you know what? Why don't we just do a deal? Let's see how let's see how it goes with one deal. If you can bring XYZ to the table and I bring this to the table, let's see how that partnership goes. And then if it works out, we like working with each other, we realize that we can build on this, we can do more together. And I think it's a great point, right? Because we do talk about partnerships and they are very important, particularly when you have investor capital, right? Because you want to make sure that you're doing everything possible. But I do think that sometimes partnerships are right for a deal, or right for a period of time, but not necessarily a lifetime. So just make sure that we understand that there is some fluidity to how you approach it. When you say it that way, I guess one of the questions naturally is, well, how do you vet a partner? How do you identify and select someone to say, hey, who knows what the next 10 years are going to hold, but at least for this deal, I feel like we can work together and partner up.
Sure. So, I guess when seeking a partner, it could happen a multitude of ways. I might be working on a deal that I just can't, take on my own, and I'm going to seek out others to try to get involved. But typically, the people who I'm seeking out are either in my network, or I'm reaching out to my network and they're referring me over to somebody else. So there's some sort of level of I don't want to say trust, but just something to go on where we could talk, and obviously they could do their research. And then there are times where somebody might come to us and say, listen, I have it, on the other end, I have a deal. It's in your market. We have it, negotiating, great price, whatever it is, we have the deal. Would love you to come in. So a lot of the partnerships or the people we're transacting with are coming within the network, mostly referrals. Like I said, I'm active on some social media. I'm active on some uh, great high level WhatsApp chat groups with just tons of players on it, and it's very friendly and very nice. And collectively, this chat group probably has 150,000 apartments, I would say, and just a lot of networking. What I did notice when it comes to real estate owners, compared to other businesses, it's not a competition. It's not, oh, I'm Pepsi or Coke. There's so many different markets where some huge player in three towns over is totally not a competitor to what I'm doing. And even if they're in the same market, maybe we'll be bidding on the same property at the same time. It's not a level of competition that's always, always, always. And you get to be friendly with a lot of other real estate guys.
I love that last point because it's so helpful because when you're in this space, those individuals will help you more than compete with you. There's you'll be amazed, like you said, from different industries. It's shocking almost. I come from corporate America in marketing. So my main job was to figure out who are our competitors, what do they do well, what do we do well, and how do we stick it to them, right? Like how do we stand out and make sure our buyers, our clients, our customers, they know that we're the right choice for them. So I was very used to that competitive mindset. And when you get to commercial real estate, there's so much collaboration, support, folks who bought a property in the same area, bought a property you were competing with, they're happy to share notes with you and tell you, hey, I looked at these three property management companies. I didn't like this one. Watch out for that. I was talking to a guy a little while ago. I saw him on a tour for a property. And I knew him, but we were both touring the same asset. So I'm like, oh, it's good to see you. And we traded notes after the tour. And, this is around the, call for offers. And he's like, hey, you submitting? I'm like, yeah, I'm coming in here. Where are you coming in? And he's like, hey, well, watch out for this one thing that I saw. And it was just like, where else would you see that, right? Like, you know, you're competing and bidding against the same asset, but you're willing to at least share a little bit of notes. And, you know, I'll tell you what I got if you tell me what you got, right? Like, you normally
Correct,
wouldn't see
correct,
that in very many industries.
correct. Yeah, it's a tremendous level of networking when it comes to real estate. And, there's just no level, there's no type of animosity or competition. It could be maybe on a one-off deal, very, very rarely is it compared to, the 7-Eleven and the convenience store on the corner.
I will tell you one other thing, man. It's funny is when the very first, deal I did, right, when I was trying to get my first, commercial deal outside of my home market, which was in Chicago at the time, I came to Cincinnati for a meetup. And I came specifically I timed it to come. I want to go to this meetup. I want to tour this property. I want to see the family. So I toured it. I made sure it was around the time where the meetup. And I go see this property. I'm very interested in putting in an offer. This is my first commercial property outside of Chicago. And I go to this meetup, and some guy is kind of two people in front of me. We're doing this round table, just talking about ourselves. And this guy's like, "Oh, I'm from Minneapolis. I came in town. I just got this property under contract." And he starts describing his property. And I'm like, "I think that's the property I just toured today." And I was like, I'm like 90% sure. Like, how many of these properties could it possibly be? So at the end, I go up and I ask him, I say, "Hey, by any chance, was that property over on this street?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I literally just toured it today and they told me it was available. And this dude already had it under contract." So two things happen, right? I realized, okay, I'm gonna be competing with this guy a lot. Or I need to befriend this guy. And sure enough, he's a good friend of mine. This guy named Todd, and Todd's got his own podcast. We've done podcast swaps, but it's just funny how those relationships start. Going back to your point on building relationships, so great point there. Talking about markets, I mentioned I'm from Chicago, or I'm from Cleveland, but I lived in Chicago for 8 years. You're in New York, right? But you said Cleveland, you invest in Louisville. I know you got some stuff in New Jersey. How do you, one, make the decision to invest in these other markets as opposed to maybe focusing on your backyard?
So I did focus on my backyard for most of my career. First house I bought was in Trenton, New Jersey. Bought a lot of stuff in New Jersey over the years. I still own stuff in New Jersey. I'm still looking for stuff in New Jersey. I do have some recent purchases, mostly smaller assets. Again, those were my backyard. I was self-managing, driving down, collecting rent. This before Zelle and Cash App and all that stuff. When I made the transition to buy larger properties. I never liked New York to begin with, even though I live here. I never liked as far as investing. New Jersey, I thought was great, and I still love it. But a lot of people I dealt with were looking, out of state. They were buying Atlanta and Florida and Carolinas and again, the Midwest all over. And I came across a property in Cleveland. I went to school. I went to high school in Cleveland. I didn't tell you this offline, but I was in I guess a boarding school. Not for delinquents. It was just an out of town school, and it was in Wickliffe, Ohio. So it's nearby. So when I saw this property, when it came across my desk, and I saw the address, I said, "Oh, I know this. I've passed by here a few times. I used to stay weekends by some friends who lived in Cleveland Heights, and so I, came down to the property, looked at it, saw a lot of potential. Fast forward, so I own a few buildings, nearby, and I purchased some others after. And the way I got comfortable was, again, I was looking for out of town, but it was something that hit a chord when I saw this address, and I felt familiar, and I felt, let me jump in. I jumped in, big learning experience. A couple of years later, we bought some other assets in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, I got there also with somebody who I know very well, owned some property there for about 15 years. Also, he was a New Yorker. I went down a few times and got myself comfortable and really liked the market there, and purchased some assets in Louisville also. So, even though we're based in New York, we self-manage our properties. So we're very involved. I do spend a lot of hours of my time on management. It's a conversation I have with myself all the time. Am I best off spending these hours on management? It's a yes and no, and you're right and you're wrong, no matter what you tell me. But I do it for now. It's good. These are C-class assets, and with C-class assets, I feel self-management really helps keep the costs, the control of the costs down. So, for now, we're managing these assets. I travel to these properties every few weeks, sometimes in and out the same day, sometimes overnight, but I'm there a lot. And, I'm always looking for more in these markets as well. But making the transition to managing property out of state is definitely a move that was tough.
Steven, I love what you said, man. You gave us a lot of great insights to unpack. The first thing that I want to hit at is, when you talked about making that investment to an out of market property, one, you started by saying, hey, I do invest in my backyard, right? Not so much in New York, but out there in New Jersey, right? Folks are on Trenton and looking for assets there. But you had an opportunity to come across your desk in an area you were familiar with based on where you went to boarding school. And that is actually a really huge insight because when people are looking to select markets and when you realize, hey, what, maybe my market isn't best for investing, sometimes you can go to, publications and figure out where's the best place to invest. And you can get into a bunch of research and data. But the thing that's missing is the human element. And what I wrote down here in my notes is, that familiarity builds comfortability, right? If you're familiar with the area, you have a sense of the kind of people that live there, the vibe of the area, the flow of things, that's going to make you more comfortable. Now, instead to go back, right? Fly in, check it out, get a sense of, that particular location, but you were somewhat familiar with the area from spending time there. And that's a huge insight. If you're looking to invest outside of your home market, one of the things I tell everybody is look at other areas where you're already familiar. I was in Chicago, my wife was here in Cincinnati. So we came to Cincinnati about 5 to 6 times a year. So slowly I got more and more comfortable with it. And then when I would come into town and come to see family, I would also check out some neighborhoods or go meet with some brokers or go do things like that. And that got me more and more comfortable to the point where I could start, making the moves when we made our first investment here. So I would start with that, right? Where do you already have some comfortability? And then you can dig into the numbers and identify whether or not it's ideal for investing. So that's great. The second thing you talked about, though, was um, you self-manage these assets from New York. And that seems really, really challenging, particularly because these are more C-class assets. C-class assets typically have a little bit more of a hands-on approach. You may have more tenant issues and things like that. So typically they're more management intensive. Talk to me more about kind of your process and how you manage these C-class assets being hundreds, if not thousands of miles away.
So with all these assets, we do have people who work for us full time locally. So they're either live on the property in one of the apartments. Some of the properties have an office, a leasing office. So these people, these employees, they work for us full time. They're great. They allow us to remotely self-manage, but they represent us and they're local. So that solves most of the tenant facing issues on a regular basis. But yeah, it's definitely challenging when we have to, figure out different contractors or vendors to use. If our preferred 2 or 3 HVAC guys are not available, we have to figure out a fourth or a fifth. Sometimes we call 6 HVAC guys, 2 show up and 1 gives us a quote. So, you can't just call 1 and wait. Yeah, but these days with online, thumbtack and all that type of stuff, things became a little more easier and automated that a lot of it could be done remotely. But again, it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have boots on the ground that work for us full time at the properties and represent us at the properties.
And you've always kind of self-managed, right? Or have you worked with third-party management before?
So since day one, I've been self-managing. So I really learned the hard way. I've done everything. I've changed, and I don't want to say I've changed boilers and furnaces, but I've like adjusted hot water levers in the shower body, and just stuff. I'm not a handy guy, but just over the years, I couldn't get somebody, or this tenant was really complaining a lot about it, and I'll try to figure it out on my own. But I dealt with everything. When I started with the smaller assets, so the tenant interaction, the maintenance that arises, how people react to certain issues. I sort of know that already from all these years of just self-managing the smaller assets. So it definitely helped in transitioning, to the larger properties and overseeing, what goes on. I'm involved a lot, even though I'm here in New York in my office in beautiful Brooklyn, New York. I'm on the phone, constantly with my team down there. It's too many times a day to count. It's not just calling up and asking for reports. It's did the shrubs guy come because tenant 603 sent the complaint through Yardy, saying that she can't see out her window or whatever it is. So we're definitely very, very involved. Communicating, texting, WhatsApping, corporate CRM type of stuff. So it's a full-time job. It definitely is, but it helps pencil in some of these deals, the C-class deals. But third-party management is great for Class A assets, I think. Class C, possibly not.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I think it's helpful, right? It peels back the onion a little bit on what that actually looks like, and we might go a little technical here, but hopefully people can still follow. But what you're describing is, for those folks who maybe have a smaller property or smaller portfolio, typically they're self-managed, right? And you're dealing with everything, you're leasing, you're maybe hire a maintenance guy, call a maintenance guy when you need something, right? But you're taking all those phone calls yourself, right? When you're smaller. Or you hire a manager, right? You hire a property manager, usually just an individual who is doing all that. And then the same, they're going to call in the maintenance guy, but they're getting all those phone calls. When you scale to larger, you really have two options, right? You're going to go third party management or do what you do, self management, but you still have that person who's on payroll, who is the interface between the residents and the company or the property, right? So that's going to be your property manager. You might have a leasing agent, you might have a maintenance tech. And where I think some people don't fully understand is that you, as the owner, I mean, you're still the owner, right? You're still the asset manager, kind of driving the fiscal vision of where things are going. But maybe some folks don't fully understand what the property management company is doing to support that on-site manager, right? I believe that on-site manager is crystal clear, like, and so important because they're the interface. Tenants are going to base their relationship with the company, with the building, based on their interactions with that individual. If you've got a great property manager, they can make tough situations and turn them around where residents stay even when they maybe want to leave. Rent increases or easier conversations when you got the right PM. Um, and I think sometimes people hire a property management company based on a reputation when it really may be more as a result of the individuals at that property. Can you just give us a little bit more context on kind of that role you play, not so much as the asset manager and the investor, and not so much obviously with the on-site management team, but that property management company? Because I think most people probably will not be in a position to self-manage their assets, even with an on-site manager, but maybe they also don't even understand what that entails. So can you just give us a little bit more about what the property management company does as opposed to maybe that on-site person, and obviously the asset manager?
So I mean, us as the property management company, we are really just making sure all cylinders are moving and all the wheels are greased, etc. We're seeing, we see every tenant interaction that's done digitally. So any email that comes through, any text that comes, even though it's not coming to my inbox and it's my responsibility specifically to respond, I do see it and I get notified and I have it set up where I see it right away. So I see basically everything that's happening on a digital scale. And these days, more and more interaction between tenants and the leasing office and tenants and the maintenance supervisor. It's done by text. It's done by email. So I'm really seeing that in real time on a regular basis. And what I do is I'm really just making sure that everyone's not getting overwhelmed, because it's, no matter what the job is, it's always overwhelming for everybody. And I'm making sure that each item is getting addressed, and sometimes you have to juggle which items are first and which items respond to later. It becomes a juggling act. So again, I'm not fixing anything personally. I'm not getting the phone calls, but I'm just being on top of making sure that everything, all the conveyor belts are flowing well. And there's plenty of hiccups, and sometimes it's my fault, sometimes it's the fault of somebody who works for us, and sometimes it's just bad luck. But me, who, like you said, I'm fiscally responsible for this property, but at the same time, I'm managing the property. I am trying to push through, making sure that every maintenance request gets done. Every time the insurance company decides to pop up with an inspection and add God knows what that needs to be fixed, or else they're going to raise my premiums, which they raise anyways. I have to get this done, and sometimes, the person on site doesn't know who to call to help repair a retaining wall, for example, that is not just a common. So that would be up to me or somebody in my office to get 10 call 10 people, have 3 show up, and again give one estimate, and try to get it taken care of. So I'm really just making sure that on a higher level that everything is being taken care of, and technology helps a lot. I couldn't imagine doing what I'm doing now on the property management side remotely 15 years ago. I just couldn't. I really couldn't, because I find it tough today. And again, everything is digital for the most part. The only thing I'm not really seeing is when a tenant walks into the office and has a conversation. We have cameras, and obviously we could see it. I'm not that's not. I can't interact or get involved at that level.
Yeah, I think it's helpful because, again, if you're newer to commercial, larger real estate, you're making that transition, you may be used to paying your PM maybe 8 to 10% or something like that, 6 to 10% of revenue. And then when you get into large commercial, typically you're paying anywhere between 3.5 to 5% of revenue to the property management company. But on top of that, you're paying the payroll for the on-site team. So you may be asking, well, what do I actually get for that 3.5 to 5% that I'm paying the property management company? And that's what you just kind of detailed, right? You get kind of that back end, right? Someone who's reaching out to the vendors, overseeing the communication, making sure that the right tasks are being prioritized, setting that vision for that property manager, because property managers are really good at what they do, but they're not necessarily thought leaders or business people, right? They're good at interacting with tenants and residents and helping to make sure issues get addressed, but they're not necessarily thinking about how to grow your revenue 3% next quarter. Like that's not necessarily the skill set they possess. So it's great to have kind of that PM team or the leadership that can provide that. And that's what you do. And that's what, if you choose to go third party management, that's what you would be looking for from your third party management company. Steven, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you breaking down kind of some of the differences there in how you manage your properties, particularly the C-class properties, because they can be more management intensive. But I think you gave a lot of great feedback to help our listeners understand what they should be paying attention to if and when they are ready to scale. If you want to learn more about Steven and his company, you can go to wecapitalx.com. We'll make sure we put a link to that in our show notes. But right now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. Steven, give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
I recently spoke about this. I was on a panel in Atlanta. I was talking to a small audience. And one of my first mistakes I made was when I took a new tenant in, I didn't do a background check. It was a couple. They moved into an apartment on a Friday. And on Saturday night, she called me and said, we have to move out. My husband got arrested. I said, oh, is everything okay? Yeah, no, he's fine. No, everything is fine. But he got arrested for arson. I said, arson, what? Yeah, he burnt down our last apartment this morning. So, it was quite a story. She ended up staying with me a few months, and she paid the rent, and it was actually very nice. But it taught me that background checks and sometimes the gut feeling of taking a tenant in doesn't always turn out correctly. Had I done a background check, I would have seen that, not the arson, but I would have seen some other issues on it that I would have stayed away from him, to begin with. So doing better background checks is definitely some mistakes I've made. I made some mistakes with the types of loans I took out as far as adjustable and floating rate. More floating rate debt on some bridge loans with some commercial properties. Pre-2008, I never played around with the adjustables. So when 2008 came, I didn't really have too much of a problem. Everything was in fixed 30-year or 15-year fixed back then. I had some trouble financing new properties, but they weren't really lending to anybody. Um, on a commercial deal, we took some floating rate debt that we underwrote. We got it at 5.25%. We underwrote it conservatively. Oh, if it goes up, maybe 7.5%. Anyways, it ended up coming up to 9.5, almost 10%. Luckily, we got out of that. We got very lucky to get out of that loan. And we were able to get a stabilized loan at a much better rate. That was about a year and a half ago. So a lot of these mistakes are horrible when they happen, but you learn from it, and some of these mistakes are cheaper than education from Yale, and you learn a lot from it. So hopefully you don't make the same mistakes twice. I've made the same mistakes twice, but hopefully there's more wins and less mistakes over time. And after 20 years, hopefully you're doing okay.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I never got into the Bigger Pockets websites. I'm sure they're great. I just never got into it. I do listen to just tons of podcasts, whether they pertain to my industry or not. I still listen to a lot of the smaller, the guys who focus on the wholesaling single family homes and stuff like that. Stuff I've never done ever, and I probably never will. But I still enjoy all the podcasts. I love podcasts. I don't really watch them on YouTube, but I'm in the car a lot, so lots of audio podcasts, all types. I get a lot of my education from podcasts. I could listen to an hour of podcast, and there's 6 seconds that somebody said that not necessarily is that 6 seconds gold, but it changes the way I think about something. And now I get to really have an epiphany, and it's happened so many times. Or just things come to light because of a 3-second tidbit.
Yeah, it could also be a nice reminder, or even if you're reading the same book, you read a second or third time, it might hit you a little differently just based on what you're going through. So always good to continue that education. Speaking of books, give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Okay, so I don't really gift books. I did buy, and it's a cliche, but I bought Rich Dad Poor Dad for my nephew. My nephew is in law school, and actually finished law school. He's very successful, first year, second year lawyer. And I figured, he's making a nice income. He should have a different approach to money. And Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's not necessarily for real estate guys, but it really teaches you how to see money and income and assets on a different level. And so I bought that book for him. These days, it's Amazon, it's 2 clicks and it shows up by him. I guess maybe I should be buying more books for more people. But that's the only book I've bought for anybody.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
A daily habit that keeps me focused. I'm Jewish. I'm Orthodox Jewish, and I pray every morning. That's usually the first thing I do. But I'm married with 7 kids, so I'm in the house in the morning with all the kids, and that keeps me pretty focused on how to spend my day at the office, having those kids around. So the daily habit of waking up in the house and knowing I need to provide for them keeps me focused, whether I like it or not.
All right. Give me your number one insight for scaling a multifamily portfolio.
Find a good partner. There's details to it. There's equity raising. There's guys who are great with dealing with debt and banks, but really just finding the right partner. Some people might argue, find the right deal and everybody will fall in place. I think the other way around, you have great partners that you can tap into. So when a deal does fall into my lap, I can call, oh, this partner would be good for it. Maybe not this one, because it's this area or this amount of money. But just having a network of people that you could quickly coalesce around and try to make it work.
All right, you are in New York. We're gonna lighten the mood. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
These days, my favorite place to grab a bite is probably a restaurant called Essen, ESSEM. It's on Coney Island Avenue, Avenue J in Brooklyn, New York. Great food, great deli, great everything.
Love it, man. Love it. Sounds like a great place. We have to check that out next time we're in New York. You gave some great stuff today, Steven. You talked about kind of your background getting into, starting with single family homes, transitioning into larger apartments, and really overcoming some limiting beliefs, particularly around partnerships, right? And being able to find the right person, recognize that it's not a 20-year partnership, but it could be deal specific, and just understanding that, hey, in order to really scale, you got to trust and be able to bring in other people. So that was really helpful. And then also talking about how you're able to change markets, getting outside of your backyard, expanding into Cleveland, expanding into Louisville, having that familiarity with the market made you a bit more comfortable. But then also talk about how you manage these C-class assets, which typically are a bit more management intensive. So appreciate you sharing some of that intel with us today. Again, for folks who want to learn more about you or your company, you can go to wecapitalx.com. We will link to that in the show notes. Steven, thank you again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.